Okay, we will start with Perek Aleph Mishna Bet, and the Mishnah begins with Shimon Tzadik Haya Mishiarei Knesset Hagdola. So Shimon Tzadik was one of the last people to survive, who was part of the Anshe Knesset Hagdola. Anshe Knesset Hagdola was um, the last stage in the tradition in the Masorah that was mentioned in the previous Mishnah, and Huaya Omer, he used to say, this was his common saying, Al Shlosha Devarim Ha'olam Hamed, that the world stands on three things, on three pillars, Al Torah, Al Ha'avoda, V'al Gumilos Chasadim. And the three things are Torah, Avoda, and Gumilos Chasadim. So all three of these, or actually the first two, are a little bit ambiguous because the word Torah can refer to Torah study, or it can refer to keeping the Torah in general. If it's Torah in general, then how is Avoda different than Torah? So it must be that Avoda is like a particular, very specific form of worship, but Torah, again, is either Torah, either keeping the Torah in general, or I think more likely studying the Torah. Avoda is most likely temple service is translated avodas hakorbanos, or it can mean also tefillah, which replaces avoda. Tefillah is avoda shebelev, or avoda could mean just like a personal worship where there's like a inner connection versus an external manifestation of mitzvos or intellectual manifestation through Torah study. Avoda is worship. In general, Torah study and tefillah and Torah are definitely like two pillars of the Torah, and the third seems a little bit easier to understand. Gemilas Chasadim, even though it's part of the Torah, but it's its own realm of being kind to other people. These are the three pillars that uphold the world. Now, a lot of Mefarshim noticed that the last Mishnah in the first Perek says something similar, which is Al Shlosha Dvarim Ha'olam Omed Ala Din Ala Emes Ve'Ala Shalom, that the world stands on three pillars, agrees that it's three pillars, but three different pillars, and those are justice, truth, and peace. So, I mean, it's possible that they disagree what the three pillars are. I always felt that the most likely resolution is that this later Mishnah is talking in a more practical level, that the world, meaning society, requires justice. Because if there's no justice and there's no trust in and value of truth, then there would be anarchy, and the world literally wouldn't stand. In that society would descend into chaos. Whereas our Mishnah, Perek Bet, Mishnah Bet, is saying something a little bit different, that the world could exist without Torah. You could have a functional society which is orderly and functions, but what would be lacking is the purpose of the world. And what our Mishnah is saying is that the world stands in other words, the world exists and has purpose because of the values of the Torah and the worship and kindness one to another. That's Mishnah Bet. Mishnah Gimel, we'll just do one more Mishnah. Antigonos isocho kibel mishimon tzadik. Huaya omer. So Antigonus came after Shimon HaTzadik, and what he used to say is his own teaching. Al tiyu ka'avodim hameshamshinas arav al manas lekabel pras. Don't be like servants who serve their master for the purpose of receiving a prize or a payment. Ela havu ka'avodim hameshamshinas arav shelo al manas lekabel pras. You should be like a servant who serves not because of any reward. Vihi mor shamayim aleichem, and presumably, I don't know if this is a separate prayer, hoping that we would have Yirat Shamayim, but maybe through this a person could achieve Yirat Shamayim to really care about Hashem. This Mishnah is unusual for a couple of reasons. One is that I don't know that there are any servants who serve not for payments. it seems like maybe a theoretical but not an actually practical scenario of servants who serve just because they love their master or they feel that their master is so awesome, they want to just have the opportunity to serve their master. But even if it doesn't exist in the real world, that we should still aspire to try to treat Torah and religious worship in that way. It's also a little bit of a surprising Mishnah because the Torah spends a lot of time speaking about what the rewards are for mitzvot. Um, like in the Shema, if you follow my mitzvah, you're going to have rain, you're going to have prosperity, you're going to have security, you're going to have stability in your land. When you don't follow the mitzvah, you won't have rain, you won't have money, you will have exile, you will have instability. So the Torah constantly speaks of reward and punishment as a consequence for the mitzvah. So here, Antigonus Isocho feels that even though the Torah focuses on reward and punishment, and the Rambam says that one of the Ikari Hamuna is justice, reward, and punishment, that shouldn't be the thing that drives us when we do our mitzvot. We should do the mitzvot for the fact that we want to worship Hashem. Aside from that, we also believe for sure that Hashem will give reward and punishment, and we are completely loyal to our belief that that exists, but we're also loyal to Hashem that we want to do all the mitzvot even without that reward and punishment, and therefore it's be like servants who are not thinking about the reward, but there is a reward, and you should know that. And if you'll worship in this way, then we will really have Yirat Shema.